Do you want to lead off, Corey, and tell us where we are? And
sure. Sure. So
just before you start, do we want to allow people to ask questions during this, or should we hold it all up until the end? I'm easy either way. What's everybody think?
I think we ought to hold till the end.
All right. So okay. Well, so we'll do the usual. So if you have any comments to make or questions to ask, please check the raise your hand thing on the bottom of the participants list, and then we'll see you. So go ahead, Corey.
I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the point of this is to continue the discussions started during the board meeting. The discussion of previous events would have been inside, group activities in the ballroom, and our path going forward. And Joe had made a great point about let's go through the things that existed, the things that were previously done in there, so that we can kind of address them, each and every one, and then get a kind of a game plan as to what we're going to proceed with. So I don't know if I should share it. I can just go through the list, but it's the existing events. I'm sure the majority of you that are residents here are familiar with them. You know, and they range from everything from fitness classes, the walk fit, the yoga, Zumba, line dancing, weight classes, dance that walk in the ballroom. We've kind of lumped everything into the same, even if it was previously in the arts and crafts or library, based on the need to count the number of people. So you have kind of the mixed arts and crafts, the canasta that took place in the library, mahjong, you know, different forms of bridge, ping pong, which is currently I think being played outside, painting class, Texas Hold'em, which is currently happening in the ballroom on set days, euchre, which is scheduled to happen in the ballroom, bingo, which is the big question from Jim and I know for the community, singles group, dominoes, game night, learning lectures which have occurred, neighbor to neighbor, new resident receptions, trivia nights. I know they've received questions about that, whether or not that could be done. Bunko, the women's club luncheons, music club, and then of course any committee meetings that are now all taking place by Zoom, and you know, previously scheduled events that were comedians or shows. So I think from my perspective, what I'd like to understand or hear from the board or discuss with the board is what is our path going forward and what is the expectation, you know.
Well, we're all active, aren't we? I'll start. In thinking about what we would like to do with events, I think based on attendance or what type of table they use, we can group everybody together, i.e., if you take dominoes, canasta, and all of the card groups and lump them together and establish a guideline for them, may be an easy way to go.
Sure.
Number two, if someone would like to use the ballroom for something like walk fit and exercise and all that, if we combine those groups, we can set a guideline for that type based on participation and what they use. And I want to clarify what they use for a minute. Some of the card groups, most of the card groups use card tables, and they have 4 at a table. Well, obviously that isn't social distancing, but they do have masks on. I think the poker group uses a round table and everyone sits side by side. So rather than get into the nitty-gritty, it really is an at your own risk situation, and our guidelines should be based on attendance and location.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said to Maggie, does she want to weigh in, or Tammy?
Yes. I agree with Joe that in some games, like card games, you're actually sharing the same gadgets, whatever they are, dominoes or mahjong or little blocks or whatever. There is a lot of exchange with your hands on the items that you're playing with. And then there are other items, things like the exercise, where you are somewhat independent. You don't share the stretchy rubbers, you don't share the weights, you bring your own. So there is less sharing and it's more easier for distancing because you don't have to be 2 feet apart from each other in order to do your exercise. So that has to be taken in consideration. To me, it seems like it would be easier to set up exercise than it would be table games. It's just my opinion, less risk.
Agree. But
You know, my
Corey has checked. I'm sorry, go ahead.
okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Okay, I just was concerned because I know Corey has checked and we find that nobody else has opened up their ballroom to any major event, like more than 10 people. Do we want to be the first ones of all the castle communities to open up to allow for bigger groups when we're the ones most at risk? We're the older group. And even the younger groups aren't opening up their clubhouse and allowing more than 10 or 15 people. I just think we're making a big mistake being one of the early ones to talk about opening up inside. Now, outside it's a different story. Anyway.
I want to add something there too. And Sun City and Kings Point, their ballrooms, you can fit in at least 3 or 4 hours in each one of theirs. That's how huge they are. And of course, they have a lot more people, but they haven't opened anything indoors. And we know that because we normally attended their events for dancing and stuff like that. So we know they haven't opened either.
I guess if I may, my concern and is shared across my counterparts. From their standpoint, they haven't looked to do anything throughout 2020. Is what the stance that they're doing for indoors. They've been getting creative with opening things outdoors. I forwarded to the board an estimate for what would be basically a TV stand system to possibly move some of these groups, especially the larger walk fit or even Zumba or dancing sort of groups outside for what I believe to be a reasonable cost, so that you are able to maintain distancing, you're able to project your voice, you're able to play your exercise videos or whatever it is. I think that to group it all together, that's the decision for the board and the group really is how are we proceeding, and from there I can begin to work on, as we are, spoke with Sherry yesterday, I've been in contact with obviously the lifestyle group on how we try to bring events outside to the parking lot, outside to the pool area. How do we bring some sort of entertainment, but to your point, Maggie, and the others, not bring it inside where other people are.
I was talking to Sherry last night, and Sherry, please correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the ideas we thought of for the bingo, since they seem to be ones that are driving this because they want to get back to that. You know that area right outside of the arts and crafts, it has some tables and they have chairs. And then along the way of the coffee, the arts and crafts, and the outside of the office, there is more tables and they all somewhat spaced out. That would be a good area, is shaded and it has tables and there's a limited number of seating as well. So the numbers will be maintained small and the tables and chairs are already there and it is already outside. So that would be an option for the bingo. Either have it someplace like that or wait until we can open the clubhouse safely.
Corey, can I ask you, because you're probably the one that's going to know this answer, as far as the card games and such that are being played currently,
Mhm.
they've been moved to the ballroom, correct, from the library?
Yeah, there's no more, everything that could be moved that's approached us for something along that lines has been moved to the ballroom.
And how many are playing at a time, and how many tables are set up for those card games?
It's the setup that's been sitting there basically the entire time. It's I would say roughly 16 at the greatest, and that's typically the most. And that's everything that's taken place in that way has been with the understanding, of course, that it is at their own risk. They come in, they manage their own cleanup, setup, tear down. And it's not something that the staff is involved with, and it's honestly it's typically taken place when the staff is not having to be present. Most of them is late afternoon, evening is when they've been coming in. But
Is it poker only, or is there something else going on?
It's been basically poker. Euchre was going to start with a group, I want to say about 12, but then we had that retraction and that shutdown, so they were supposed to start back up. With the understanding again that they handle the cleaning and that they obviously have to social distance and wear masks the entire time. That the masks are, these rules are not kind of negotiable.
Right. I mean, I've never played euchre, but I have some idea what it's all about.
It's like hearts or spades.
I understand that. I'm just concerned how they're going to social distance because they need to be relatively close to the source of cards on the table. That to me, on a big round table that the poker people play, you can see where that can work because you can spread yourselves apart a little bit more. But I have a hard time figuring out how 4 people playing at a card table can socially distance.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
And my feeling is that anything that we allow has to include the provisos of wearing a mask and socially distancing. And I'm not sure that regular card games where there are 4 people at the table that you can successfully achieve that. Now, somebody can prove me wrong, but that's my concern. I would like to see us go through this list that you did, Corey, and figure out what we can move out effectively, move outside, whether this idea of a television, you gave us the quote for that I put forward earlier in the week, that which activities could be made to work using something like that TV, a big, large, widescreen television that could be made to work outside.
Yep. Okay. I'll start at the top then. A lot of them, as Joe was saying, I think we can group them together. The walk, fit, yoga, Zumba, basically the exercise classes. Let's kind of start there. Let's attack those first.
Let's separate them out into exercise classes that could theoretically be held outside and those that couldn't, because I'm not sure that yoga would be okay outside when the weather cools down.
Sure.
Whereas the people who are moving around, they warm themselves up and won't mind a little bit of a cool breeze in the morning sometime.
Well, then let's back it up just a touch as well. I mean, if we're separating out yoga, are you considering that for inside in the ballroom, or is that to the yoga room?
Let's deal with each one as we come to it, as how we can best allow them to function if that's what we want to do.
Okay. All right. So let's start with walk fit. Walk fit is typically done in the ballroom multiple times throughout the week. Also done in the gym at a different time during the week or day.
If we set up a TV outside, is there any reason why walk fit and Zumba could not be done outside?
The only thing I can think of, Ron, is the evenness of the floor and the possibility of tripping.
What about the putting green?
Yeah, exactly. The putting green is what we put
That
forward.
would be okay, but if you put it on where the lower cement blocks are, I would think there could possibly be some risk of a twisted ankle or something like
Right.
that.
Okay, so we're thinking outside putting green for those sort of classes.
They also, if I remember correctly, there is one of the cover areas right behind the putting green
Mhm.
that was intended to be like for grilling and things like that. It has a flat floor. It's outside. I don't know if there is an electric outlet or not, but
I
it
think
is
it was-
also undercover. So that would be a more available even on bad weather. I mean, you still would get in there, but
But I'm not sure it's big enough to allow more than one or two people underneath it. But the nice thing about that was that you'd be able to put the TV in there, and it would protect it from any sunlight and things of that nature.
Right.
So that can certainly be a useful addition. Well, it is a useful addition to the amenities that we can make use of in this case.
Yep. And within that quote that I sent to you, I included a 60-foot reel so that we can kind of move this TV as need be, and then a smaller portable PA system for classes to be led by whatever instructor. So is the consensus or feeling that that Walk Fit and Zumba could, if the groups want to resume, could be done outside if we proceed with the purchase of the TV and setup?
I like the idea of trying that outside too.
Sherry, you've been unmuted, so if you want to weigh in, you can do so.
I guess what I would, mention in terms of being outside for any events, just as an FYI, looking up the average temperatures for the month of October, November, December, very pleasant. October ranges anywhere from 85 to 70 degrees. When you go into November, you're in the high 70s to 60. So as far as the temperatures outside to be able to do anything, some of the concern I had heard before was whether that would be weather appropriate. So it appears that it'd be weather appropriate for any of those outside activities. And Maggie, I hear your concern about the indoor activities, and yeah, does a 55 plus community want to be the first one to start the indoors? And I also just want to mention at the same time that many of our Welcome Lifestyle Committee are online as well. Giselle, Kathy, and Tim are here, and they may have some perspectives as we get to the part talking about the social events. As far as the clubs, I would say, if clubs like bingo and others are requesting, then my thought is figure out a way to make it work. If there are clubs that are not requesting at this point, I'm the coordinator for bingo, or for bunco. I'm the co-coordinator for Mahjong. I would think that the coordinators of each of these activities would have a thought. Personally, I don't care to start up bunco at this point. As the coordinator, to Maggie's point, close proximity and handling materials is a concern. So my impression is those groups who have requested a possibility of resuming, figure out a way to make it work, following, and I said what our committee has talked about is following CDC guidelines.
So what else is there other than Walk Fit and Zumba where we could, I guess line dancing would work that way too.
Line dancing, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dance That Walk, is that a kind of a LED sort of program or video-based program? I'm not familiar, so.
It is a video-based program.
Okay.
And a question could be, open question, do we want to offer those, or can some of those groups kind of during our safe time coalesce around maybe one fitness activity? You know, it's dance that walk. And I'm not, you know, making any judgment on this. I'm just saying, could those people be just as happy doing like a walk fit?
I guess that's for them to decide.
Or
I
maybe
think that-
rotate the course each week as to which one that you provide.
Good point.
Could rotate it.
Yeah.
And then the numbers are different also. I mean, I you know, I know some of this because I attended almost every exercise class there is, even though it doesn't show. I attend almost every single exercise class. Some of them at 8 a.m. were Zumba related, and then the ones at 9 were more, and depends who brought the CDs also to determine what the music or the display was. So it wouldn't hurt to ask them, should we find a middle time that works for everybody? Instead of having 2 or 3 people set up everything for a small number that might be interested on the outside, doing it outside.
Maggie, since you have stated you attend most of those, what's the average attendance per those different classes?
Depends on the time of the year and now on the time of the day. There were fewer people at 8 a.m. than at 10 a.m., for instance.
I wonder
That
why.
helps you.
Figure.
If there were any more than like 20 at a time?
I would say sometimes yes. They would not just only fill up the stage area, they would do also dance or exercise between the tables, you know, because the
I was just
furniture
wondering
remained in place.
If the whole I was just trying to think out loud that if the whole ballroom was open and if you set a limit to 20 people, you know, that keeps it, they're saying groups of no more than 10, and 10 people could social distance in that ball.
Lost your sound.
You lost your sound, Tammy.
I think I lost my voice. I don't show it.
We can't hear you, Tammy.
But Tammy is still mentioning the inside of the ballroom, and what we're trying to focus in here, Tammy, is taking everything outside, because inside is the risk.
Can't hear you, Tammy.
We can hear you, Tammy.
Tammy, we can't hear you. You lost your sound somehow. You're completely mute.
Sounds like
Something wrong with you.
She's unmuted, but it's not coming through.
Right.
And you.
Well, here comes the engineer.
So maybe Corey, you can mute her and then unmute her again.
No, he tried that.
She's still, she should be good, but I don't know if she popped in something else.
might be connected.
Well, I mean,
Following on, if I may, from what Tammy started to say, my big objection to even contemplating doing any exercises in the ballroom is that even in the best of circumstances, I'm not in favor of using the ballroom for exercise. I know that we don't have an awful lot of choice because of the fact that we don't have space. But particularly right now, anything in the ballroom which causes people to perspire and therefore allow body fluids to get on the carpet or anything else around is inappropriate. And I don't think that we should permit under any circumstances any exercise activities in the ballroom or anything that requires lying on the floor in the ballroom, such as yoga, at this point in time. I just don't think it's appropriate in the circumstances.
Plus you breathe heavier when you're working out, and when you're breathing heavier, you know, you tend to also breathe through your mouth when you're exercising. And I don't think it's healthy to try to wear a mask when you're exercising, and definitely when you're indoors.
Again, I would refer you back to the temperatures. It's going to be very pleasant outside.
I agree, Chair.
You know, you see a lot more people walking this time of year. Tim, do you have a perspective on this?
You'll have to unmute him.
yep.
You have to unmute himself.
Tim, unmute yourself.
Click on the microphone.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I got two things with this. One, I sent a text to, why don't we just run a tent and cover the area behind the ballroom? And then you got that area there where you can move everything outside. You can have your TV underneath the cover where it's not going to be weathered, but the tent area you got is the thing. I'll move the fire pit over, the dummy one I just laid there, so it's out of the way and you'll have that whole area there. We can either put down plywood if you're worried about the floor being too hard, just, you know, cheap stuff for a while to keep it the area. This way you can have your dancing or your, what is it? Yoga?
Walk fit.
Walk fit, dancing.
Yoga, you put the mats on plywood, that's no problem. And the other one is, I don't know, this would probably go to Jason, if they thought about putting ultraviolet lights in the air conditioning units out.
Tammy's been, I don't know whether Tammy's sound is back again, but I'll speak, it's not. So I'll speak for her. Tammy's been doing some research on that.
Okay.
And she has some information on that, and it's certainly worth looking at, not only for now, but for the future. So that's something that is being looked at right now.
But the tents right now, I imagine to be pretty reasonable because no one's using them except for restaurants. You know, I mean, there are no big carnivals going on anywhere where you need them.
I mean,
we've looked at, John and I looked at one time of purchasing them. It's a one-time purchase and would cover the whole area, but it's quite expensive because they have to be hurricane proof. You have to get permits.
Yeah.
But my feelings is I'm a gym rat, you know that. And I went to the gym one day and after that, I haven't been in since. I just don't feel comfortable in inside spaces with my medical conditions. So I'm just, and I know too many people that have got this and they have no idea how they got it. You know, they haven't any contact with anybody. So that's just my feeling on that. But I think you can either put the tent in the back or you can even put it in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean, different organization, outside activities there.
Corey, let's look.
Yes.
Let's look at the possibility of renting a tent or something like that. Just do the research. I mean, we're not committing to anything, but let's just look at the potential for that and see whether we could get something to put out behind the ballroom there, or even out front, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I can get you an
Or
estimate.
just try using the one that is already there by the golf.
It's
A
too
lot of
small.
people,
Too small, Maggie.
yeah,
Too
it's
small.
just, well, this is the thing that my observations, okay? Everybody wanted to open the pools and open the pools and open the pools and complain and complain. Okay, the pools were open. If you go at different times of the day, you're going to find that there is not a lot of people there.
Maggie, you're 100% correct, but there are people who want to do these things, and I think that, as has been pointed out on numerous occasions, they're paying their HOE fees. If they want to risk their health and even their lives in some instances, and I don't want to be dramatic about it, but if they're willing to do that, and this is important enough to them, we need to provide those facilities for people to do what they want to do. We as a board, in my opinion, should not encourage anybody to do anything of this type of thing, gathering together with other people, getting too close to other people and so forth. It's just an inappropriate thing to do in the circumstances. But if people want to do it, then we should give them the facility to do it on the total understanding that it's at their risk entirely.
The one caveat I'd like to make, if I may, and this was brought up before, is that, and I understand what you're saying, but I want to make, my opinion at least, is that we don't want to force the staff to be part and parcel to that.
Okay, absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, so you made the point earlier on that anybody who comes in has to have a responsibility to set up and take down and clean up after their events. If they're not willing to do that, then nothing's going to happen. And the same thing will apply to these other events, that if they want to do them, they're very welcome to do them, but they've got to do the cleanup afterwards, because we cannot, it's not our role to put the staff in a situation where they're defenseless. Kathy, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I did. For those who want to participate in those events, have you considered a COVID-19 waiver? having them sign a waiver. Because I know in my real estate world now, when I list a property that's going to be shown, I have to have the seller sign a COVID waiver that they understand there's going to be people coming into their home. On the other side of the token, if you're working with a buyer, they also have to sign the COVID waiver, saying that they understand they're going into other people's homes. So have you considered a COVID-19 waiver?
Right, certainly something that we could consider. Perhaps we should ask Karen about it, Jason, and see what she says.
I do not have my video on for you all to see me because I have an active dog and I don't want to be distracting. But just kind of looking at faces, Renata, I kind of noticed something in your expression. Did you have a comment?
Who?
Renata.
Yeah.
Yeah, you all were talking about tents. And I know that the funeral homes aren't having as many, official funerals as they normally do. And they do have tents, and perhaps they would, that would be a way that you could either get one for free or at least for a minimum cost.
Okay.
Good idea.
Okay.
I know that I have personally, for events, I've borrowed tents from funeral homes.
Good to know.
I'm sort of getting the feeling that we can do things outside, but we shouldn't be doing anything inside unless, except in very, very small groups, that people who want to do this on the understanding that they do it, at their own risk, that's the direction that we should be going. Does anybody disagree with that?
Ron, we talked about this the other day, but I just wanted to reiterate the guys that play poker and have been coming in and playing poker. Sam has kind of taken responsibility for that group and for the actual activity, and it's worked out quite well when somebody involved in the activity takes the responsibility for making sure that they meet the guidelines that we've given them. When he comes in and his group comes in, they're very good about going around cleaning up prior to sitting down, and when they leave, they've cleaned up again before they've left. And they've made sure, and Sam has been in charge of that group to make sure that things go well, because for no other reason than he wants to continue to be able to do that. He doesn't want his group to do something that would cause it to be an issue for the association. And in doing so, everybody who's came to those events has taken responsibility for themselves and their actions. So it's when they do that, everybody who's there, they make it a point to say, hey, this is how we're handling it. This is what we're doing. And this is the way it makes it work. And I think if other groups that want to use the ballroom take that same process and say, this person's going to be in charge of it and make sure that they meet the guidelines that we draw up for them, and they maintain smaller groups, and we make sure that they can social distance. And if they have an event that they are doing, we provide a list of items that they must meet to be able to continue to do it, as we have been talking about putting together, and allow them to take responsibility for their event. We have a lot of opportunities to make sure that they follow those guidelines. And if they're within those guidelines, I think we're covered as far as our responsibility to make sure that people are doing what they need to do. And it still gives the residents who want to and have access to the facilities the ability to do that without having large events. If we as the association are sanctioning an event, I think we're the ones taking responsibility, and we have to look at what's best for the safety of the community. And if individuals want to use the ballroom in smaller groups and want to take on that responsibility and make sure that they follow the guidelines themselves and take responsibility for their actions, I think there's a lot of opportunity to use the ballroom. So I hope that if we can continue to put together those guidelines that people have to follow, make sure that the board is happy with those guidelines, and then give the people the responsibility, hand that responsibility off to them and say, you must meet these guidelines to continue to use it. I think it'll work out well. And like I said, Sam that group being kind of a test, there was a couple of them. I'm using Sam as an example because he's been, over and above very make sure his guys do it the right way. And I think if everybody does it that way, I think we'll have a safe, be able to do something safely.
Jason,
Well,
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Where the poker group is playing, what is the distance between each player at this table?
They were over 4 feet. I know when they're sitting at the table, they wear their masks. Now, during the games, I think they've, amongst their tables have decided amongst those guys at an individual table, whether or not they feel safe with those guys removing a mask. And that's where Sam has said, if people at the table don't feel comfortable, then you need to keep your mask on. But whenever we last looked, because we're using the table that normally seats 6 and they were putting 4 at it. The big round tables, and then we moved the tables far enough apart so people aren't back to back right up against each other like they normally would be under normal circumstances. They've spread the room out quite a bit and only putting 4 at each table.
well,
My
for
point-
one,
my-
I just want to make sure that you understand that you did that, and most of us on the board were not in agreement with that.
That's not the case.
No.
No, that was
In the
discussed
case
among-
of Sam. Several of us spoke out about it, and we didn't want, and I'm not talking about the new board, because this has been going on for a long time.
I understand, but you're
Because-
saying that we allowed that. No, that was discussed with the board president at the time and several board members, and there was a couple that dissented, but there were guidelines that were given to us to act under, and that with Sam, we gave him the guidelines, and he's followed those guidelines, and that was based off of the direction at the time. If this board decides that it's different and they don't want to do it, obviously we're going to take that to Sam and say you can't function that way. But as far as that particular event, when Sam asked, I put that to the board. The board said as long as he followed the rules that they had set down under the guidelines of the ballroom, that he could do it. But this is going to continue a conversation. I can shut Sam down and I'll let him know that he can no longer function that way. But that's what happened at the time. Wayne was the catalyst of that as far as our conversation, and then other board members weighed in, and a decision was made. I know there were people who disagreed, but my direction came from a majority of the board that it was okay to do that. So if that's it's felt now that it's not okay, then we can rescind that approval.
The point that I made at the time, and I'm going to reiterate today, is if you have 20 groups and one of them is strong and they come to you strong, and then you agree to do them and don't allow the other 19 groups to do, then to me that is wrong. Either other groups have the same rights, and we're saying here in this session today that we do not want to do things indoors. So, if we're saying that, then that applies to everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, if it is decided today that we won't be doing anything indoors anymore, then we'll have to let that group and other groups that had asked for use, because there were other groups as well. There was nobody denied that followed the guidelines that were there. Everyone who asked that was wanting to use it, we gave them the exact same guidelines. Some groups felt that the guidelines were too stringent and it wasn't worth it for them to come. Obviously, one of the things, many of the things that were brought up, it was the groups were going to be too large to put them on. At the time, our tolerance for group size was smaller. At the initial and in the beginning, it was 10 in the library. And then when we moved them to the ballroom, the volume of people was increased to 15 or 16. It was a judgment call for the type and size of group, but it was pushed to 15 or 16. If we're deciding now, but nobody was refused. Anybody who could follow the guidelines and perform their activity within those guidelines, they were allowed. There were 3 total groups that asked to use it and had used it or decided they didn't want to do it, but there were 3 that were given approval to do it, and that was upon them asking. If the board is deciding now that they don't want those same activities in there, that is perfectly fine, and we will shut that down. All I'm saying is at that time, we had specific guidelines, and we're talking about now about possibly changing or increasing the size or changing guidelines. We're looking at all possibilities right now. And if those guidelines are going to change, that we're going to back it off and remove everything from the ballroom, then that's a different situation, and we'll have to stop we will stop whatever activities are taking place in the ballroom.
But I think, and Jason, it's one thing if you use the ballroom like for line dancing, we can be 6 feet apart, no big deal. You play cards and you gotta pass the cards around or do whatever, then you're not social distancing. And it makes a big difference whether we're social distancing or whether we're not. If we're not social distancing, then shouldn't we wear masks? And you're saying, well, no, if they felt comfortable, they just didn't.
That was that group, and that was at the time the discussion was had. If the guidelines are going to change, I don't know. As far as the way they had theirs set up, they were quite a ways apart, and they felt comfortable with where they were at. They were cleaning everything. They had hand sanitizers on all the tables. That's what they were doing between hands and making sure that they were, if nothing else, they were putting up the illusion that they were making sure that they were taking care of any type of virus that would be spread. That being said, that they followed the guidelines we gave them. I'm not saying it was right, wrong, or if it was a good idea or a bad idea. I'm saying once we gave them the guidelines, they were my whole point was they took the time to make sure that they followed the guidelines so that they could continue to do it under those guidelines. My point was if we are producing guidelines and other groups follow in suit and make sure that they follow those guidelines, we have a fairly safe environment. And the people of the community that want to use the facilities have been very good about making sure they follow the guidelines we give them so that they can continue to use it. My point is only that the people of the community have wanted to use it when they're given the opportunity, and we come up with safe guidelines. They are very good about making sure that they follow those guidelines because they want to continue to do it. If we feel that the guidelines we put forward aren't going to be safe enough, that's different, and we can stop the activities. But I do know that if we move it outside and we give guidelines, they do everything they can to follow it. The community has been great about it, making sure that the staff is not put in a position to where they are exposing or exposed to. They've made sure that they've cleaned up after themselves and followed the guidelines. So I think if the board as a group comes up with good guidelines, they can feel fairly confident in the fact that the community has been good about following those guidelines so they can continue to use it.
My feeling on all this is provided that they maintain as an adequate level of social distancing, that they wear masks, and if they choose when they're there, once they're on site, sitting at the table, that they're all comfortable, they're not wearing masks, that's their responsibility to take their own risk. We cannot allow our staff to have to be involved in any of this, and so that the cleaning has to be done by the people who participate. No exercising which involves the possibility of bodily fluids going onto the carpets or the walls or whatever should be allowed under any circumstances indoors. And any other activity that we arrange or we allow to take place outdoors, the same rules would have to apply. The staff are not going to put themselves into an uncomfortable situation. And therefore, whoever it is, whether it's WalkFit or Zumba or anything else, they have to prepare and clean up for themselves afterwards. As long as those aspects are followed, I don't have a problem with allowing things up to certain limitations in terms of numbers, which is what we've been talking about. We're not putting anybody in a situation, we as a board are not putting anybody in a situation whereby we're asking them to take a risk. On the contrary, we're saying to you, don't take a risk, but if you want to, here's the ability to do so.
Can I tag on to that for a second, Ron? When you
Sure.
talked about the staff involvement, there's two sides to that. One is exposing staff unnecessarily to any type of virus exposure. The other side of that is the fact that if the people who are using the facility, they're using it at their own risk. And it's really important that they take their own responsibility, because the staff is not a medically trained cleaning crew. It's, the staff that's there is not trained to clean hospital facilities. So when you use the facilities, they're doing a normal cleanup that would occur for a ballroom or something like that. So if you're going to use the facilities, it's really on you to take it upon yourself to clean up in advance so that you feel comfortable. If you're relying on Irene or any of the other staff that is used to vacuuming, wiping dust, and preparing the ballroom, then you're kind of putting your life in the hands of somebody who's not trained to do that. That's the main reason. That's one of the two main reasons for saying the staff can't take responsibility for cleaning up if people want to use the facility. If we're holding an event that's for the association and we feel we want to take the risk, we're probably going to bring in a better, like a crew that does sanitization as opposed to Irene, who does cleaning and dusting and wiping down. So if you're going to use the facility at your own risk, you probably should take the time to clean it yourself. We have the cleaning bottles there, we have the wipes, we have everything that's there for you to clean up yourself. But if you're going to use it and play cards with your friends and you feel comfortable with your friends, take it upon yourself to clean the tables and things that you're going to use to make sure that they're sanitized. We're not a sanitization crew. The people that we have on staff are not hospital cleaners. So that's one of the two reasons, the exposure from one side to the other. The staff is out and lives in different communities and is exposed to other people than you. So having them clean for you or be there next to you while you're using your facilities is a risk, and the other way around too. So the cleaning part of it in itself, it's not just putting it on the residents to clean for themselves because of time, but it's also a responsibility of that person to make sure that they're in a safe environment when they're using the facilities. And that's why I've always liked the idea of somebody from the community that wants to hold an event, taking responsibility for that event and working with us to make sure they have what they need to do it, and then taking the responsibility to clean up prior to and after the event, so that they know that they are in a safe environment and we know that it was taken care of and they're taking responsibility.
The only concern I have with that is that it keeps your people safe, but if they don't do things right, then the next user of the facility is exposed unnecessarily.
I agree, and that's why they need to take
Your
it
staff
upon
is
themselves.
not, but the next user set does.
We also have two hands raised. Mr. Richard Smith's been waiting for a while, if that's all right with the group.
Yeah, sure. Bring him in.
Right, and then Renati after you, after Mr. Smith. You're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I had a question from the workshop meeting and I had to leave the meeting early. My question isn't about indoor activities. So if you want to, I don't want to disrupt this conversation, but it's a related topic. So if I may.
Ask the question and we'll decide whether we want to answer it.
Well, my question is, and I've asked this before, and I just, again, we have been looking at this issue, but we haven't come to any kind of agreement or any board action. I want to know about guests. Now, we have to understand or realize that we are being safe if we don't allow anybody to bring guests. I'm not going to challenge that. But we also have to understand is that in the coming months, several hundred people are going to come back into this community who are residents here. They are no more safe than the guests that I might bring that lives locally or comes with them. So I think we need to develop a plan. Now, somebody made a comment, I'm not sure who, the pools are underutilized and they are safe. And if we're not filling the pool up at over capacity, I don't understand why we can't allow resident homeowners to bring a guest. They get checked in by the staff, they wear a band, and if there are too many people at the pool, they would be the first people to be asked to leave. If they wear a band, everyone will know that they're a guest, and if they're fearful, they will stay away from them. But we have to look forward to the future. This virus isn't going away, and this idea that we're going to not allow guests forever, we need a plan. And that's my statement. And again, it's related, but it's an outdoor activity which is safe. If we don't allow people to bring their guests to our swimming pool, they're going to take them to the beach. They're going to take them to the theme park. They're going to take them to a restaurant. And then they're going to encounter risks, and those homeowners are going to come back into the community, possibly infected. So your comments, your thoughts, I thank you.
You didn't ask it of me, but I will go ahead and give you my opinion. Okay? In my opinion, each of us is responsible for ourselves. I personally have attempted to do as much avoidance of being in public areas as well as going out of my home to try to make sure that not only I stay safe, but I keep others safe. Bringing company, why don't you go visit them instead if you think they're at no risk? But when you bring them in, you are bringing into the, exposing the other 865 homes. So my opinion is no guests until there is a vaccine or there is more control on this COVID. That's my opinion.
I agree. I really do.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of bringing in guests. I just, we can't do anything about the people who live here and who own homes here and whatever. They have a right to be here and to use the facilities. But we do have the ability to prevent people who do not live here or do not own a house here from using the facilities. And I think in these circumstances that we should continue to do that. Now, over time, if it becomes apparent that the rate of infection and the percentages really drop significantly low and stay there, then we can sit back and look at it differently. But right now, as I see it, and I feel right now, we're teetering on the edge of, perhaps another rise. If you're looking at the rest of the country or the rest of the world, the trend is going upwards. And my guess is, unless something is happening that I'm not aware of, my guess is that we're going to see the same thing here. And if we do see a trend back upwards again, then we just need to be very, very, very careful. 3 months from now, we can look at it again, or 2 months from now, if the numbers go down and stay down, it's a different situation. But right now, I'm not in favor of it, just because of what I see going on in the world around us.
I think Rich makes a valid point that we need to pay attention to. When residents choose to take their parties off campus, if you will, whether it be to the beach or a restaurant or wherever, it is quite certain that should a resident get COVID from one of these sites, they will bring it back to the community. I agree it should not be permitted, but I do not want to underestimate the fact that our own residents attending public situations may in fact also be a risk. So we have to go one way or the other. And I don't know if we can do that.
It's a very difficult thing to do, but that's one of the reasons why we're here right now, is trying to come up with a way where we can start to provide facilities for people to have activities here so that they don't go elsewhere. It's not an easy thing to achieve when we're trying to keep everybody safe, including our staff. And so, I agree with you, Joe, that Rich's point is very valid, but there are circumstances, and my concern when you think about visitors is, where do you draw the line? Do you allow a family who've got their children and their grandchildren here, which could be 4 or 5 people come in, and the kids are going to run around, and how do you control them? Those things are difficult. And, I don't know that we could draw an equitable line anywhere to say you can have 1 guest or 2 guests or 5 guests. I just don't think it'll work, because if we say 1, then somebody's going to say, well, if you allow 1, why can't we have 2? If you have 2, somebody's going to say, well, why can't we have 3 or 4? I don't think it's going to work. I just feel we're better off saying 0 right now until things change.
What I'm hearing is that, this is an evolving, as it has been over the last several months, evolving, month to month. And to the extent that decisions are made today, doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be there next month, the month after, and 2021. I think the board is taking a good look at this in terms of the evolving issues. And then just a question and comment to Jason related to the indoor activity ballroom use of groups. How many groups have really, the card games and such, have really expressed an interest in starting up and are willing to follow the guidelines? My impression is that it's very few, but if you could verify that. And then your comment related to Sam and his poker group that have been so diligent. I kind of hate to see a pullback of that, because they have done the right thing. They have been diligent. So, you know, what are the groups, or how many?
I can answer
follow
that.
the guidelines that you have are really truly interested?
I can answer the number of groups. There's legitimately currently only 4 groups that have asked for time or space. 5 every once in a while. Jim will come in with a group to play cards as well. So you've got Sam's poker game, you've got Jim's poker game, you got the music club. The ping pong club came indoors for a hot minute, but then they decided that outside was better based on the setup and the space. And euchre was due to start as well. So that's the extent of people that have contacted. That's the extent of people that have been brought in to any extent into the ballroom based on the recommendations that were laid out previously.
So it doesn't sound like a large number at this point to be able to manage and to be able to really make sure that they understand the guidelines, and maybe to Kathy's point, if you feel like a waiver is needed.
Yeah, it hasn't been a lot of people, because I think there are still, you know, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there are enough people that are still concerned about being involved in any type of activities, and that's to be expected. The people who have wanted to use it have came in, and we've walked through with the guidelines, and they either felt that it worked with what they were trying to do or it didn't. Those who did feel it worked, we made it clear what the guidelines were, and we talked through with them what their plan would be to have, you know, hold an event like that, like I said with Sam. And once we had a good plan in place, they've been everybody who has used it has been very diligent about following the guidelines that were there. And I don't know that, you know, like I said, it's not for me to say that it's the right thing to do to have people in the ballroom. I do know that if we are going to allow it, we have to have guidelines, and those guidelines have to be to best protect the people that are in there. And the people who are using it are very conscientious of the fact that there's, you know, possibility of spreading it. So they do all that they can within their abilities. And I think they've been very good about it. And my point was not to say that it's the right thing to do. My point was to say that if we come up with guidelines and we feel comfortable with those guidelines, the people who have used the ballroom have decided amongst themselves if it was the right thing to do for them. And then if they decided it was, they've been very good about making sure they follow the guidelines. So that was my only point to it. It was not, you know, like I said, it's not to say that it's the right thing to do, or, you know, and it may be, it may not be, but the people of the community have been very good about following the guidelines we've set for them. So I think coming up with good, strong guidelines that'll protect people, if the board feels it's a good thing to do, the people of the community have responded very well to it. So that's the only point I wanted to make on that.
I would just like to bring, I want to bring this,
Go ahead, Joe.
I want to bring this conversation to a more direct situation. Whatever it is we decide to do, what's good for one is good for all. So to allow certain groups to use the ballroom means we have to allow any group to use the ballroom, as Jason says, per our guidelines. If we want to ask people to use the outside, that's really the decision I think we're making. Are we going to allow anyone to use an indoor facility? And if so, will it apply to any group who requests? And if not, will we only be doing outdoor activities?
Can I just, I mean, is anyone thinking that there is a difference, I think, between exercising and sitting and playing cards? It seems like there's a larger risk with people exercising inside. So is anybody thinking that maybe the indoor activities should continue as long as they follow the guidelines, but exercise activities outside for now with our nice weather that's coming along?
That was brought up in conversation, is to disseminate between types of activities, and certain activities such as anything that's an exercise type activity, having that move outside. The other activities that are not, causing you to breathe heavier, because obviously if you're breathing heavier, if you're expelling the virus, it's going to go further. That was part of the conversation, and none of us, I don't think anybody's doctors on the board. I'm looking at it, but basically looking at those types of situations, I think that was a portion of this meeting today, was to look at those ideas as well. And this is the start of the conversation, or not the start of, this is the second phase of continued conversation on this. And I think that's something that can definitely be looked at, to say, if you have an exercise activity, that needs to be outside. If it's a non-exercise activity and it's a group size of this, those are the guidelines that have to be established. And that's something that I think if we continue this conversation over the next few days and week, over a week or so, and narrow that down even more, I think that's something that can be considered, because I think having exercise activities indoors, and Ron alluded to it as well, exercise activities indoors, even though you can space further apart, your exposure risk is higher. It's not, and is the ballroom the best place for that? That's the discussion for the board to look at. It may not, sometimes, you look at the outdoor facilities, we look at the putting green, we looked at some of the other areas, and all of those seem like a more suitable place if we have the technology for like a walk fit to take place. If you've got an average of 15 people doing walk fit, and as I've been here and seen through, yes, there's larger groups, then there's smaller groups, but I think a number of 15 would be a legitimate number to say for some of those exercise activities. We can fit that outside if that's felt that it's safer and the right way to handle it. And if we go the technology route, I think that's something the board really needs to consider for several types of events. Corey put together that package for a TV and a stand that can roll around, and we can put a Fire Stick on it and a DVD player. Hey, you've got a mobile exercise TV also, for like trivia or things like that could occur outside underneath the tents. We increase the level of activities that we can have with something like that. Like I say, you have trivia night. With this nicer weather now, the evenings are really nice outside right now. I live around the corner from you guys, so I see it too. You put a TV outside underneath that big awning over by the pool, and you can have trivia night. You can have, I don't want to say movie night, because if there's some licensed person on here looking, I don't want to get in trouble, but you can do things at those types of activities on the exterior to increase the number of activities we can have safely. So that's something the board needs to consider. The other thing is the guidelines and type of events. But I really think that over the next couple of days, the board should look at that proposal by Corey, because I think a lot of this conversation we're having will dwindle down, because I think if we have the ability to hold these events outside with the weather the way it is right now, this pushes us into February with having safer activities outside. We're looking at February, March of next year before we have to look at coming back inside because of heat, and I'm being conservative there. I'm just saying, if we have something like that, and there's, a Thursday night trivia night under the canopy outside, where people can social distance, and we can put some speakers out there so people can hear, and have a nice calm event where people can watch it or be part of it, we increase those activities. And then the ballroom is less of a conversation for use. The more we can find a way to get out of the ballroom or out of the library or out of those areas, the more activities become safer, and we can have more and do things that are more fun for the community, that we can put things on that we can feel confident that we're doing the right thing, and everybody can feel confident. So I really hope the board will look at that over the next couple of days. And if the dollar amount on it is palatable for the board, I think it, and Sarah, if we can, I would hope, you know, that's something to where the activity levels can increase. And as Rich made comment to, and several people have made comments to, the pool area is at that size, and the way it's laid out is underutilized because of technology. It's not because of the other reason. We underutilize it because we don't have the technology to make events occur out there. I think, you know, we've talked about some forms of live music being played while people hang by the pool. Great ideas, social distancing possible. Trivia night by the pool, great idea, social distancing possible. You move it inside, people tend to gather a lot more inside, and it creates questions and concerns. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it does create those questions and concerns. If we look at that pretty deeply, I think there's a lot of opportunities for this time of year with the weather the way we have it to really increase the safe environment for people to be involved in, and the less you'll have people going outside the community to find activities to do, because people are ready. I mean, we're going on close to a year. We've got to find ways to hopefully provide some form of activity for people.
Yeah.
Corey,
Interject.
go on, whoever wanted to.
And I'd like to raise an issue. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No one's talked about the elephant in the room right now, which is bingo. Everybody's talking about the outside. Let's use the outside activities and all that. My question and my concern is, we played last night at the clubhouse, 6 of us played poker. We left at 7 o'clock. The breeze was coming up. It was getting dark. If we play bingo, we're playing from 6 to say 8 o'clock at best. It's dark then. The weather's going to change. Let's not live in this dream world that, you know, from now until March, we're going to have 80 degrees days and 70-degree nights. It will continue on. But I think that there are some groups right now who are actively using the clubhouse ballroom, doing it quite well. And I can only say Sammy's group and our group are two. The band that works out is doing it also. I put in a complete package to Corey in regards to bingo. As far as 4 tables or 10 tables with 4 people each, that would cover the whole ballroom from one side to the other. With 4 people at each, there would be at least 10 feet between tables. There would be at least 5 feet between people sitting at those tables. They only use 1 card. They use their own dauber. We have all the electronics. We have the film, the screens up on the walls and everything else, everything to do this. I even asked Corey about the possibility of getting a plastic screen to sell the cards so nobody would come in contact with the people selling the cards. I'm willing, if the board is saying that we're not ready for it until next year, I'm willing to do that, but I think then the board owes a memo or a letter or whatever it is to the community stating where we're coming from with the ballroom usage. And so everybody stops calling me or stops asking me, when are we going to start this? I'm not the one that has the answer to this. The board is the one that has the answer. Corey's been working with me on this. I'll try my best to do what we said we were going to do. We would sanitize the room before and after. We would have all kinds of social distancing. We'd hold it to 40 people and on and on and on. So we went through the whole A through Z type of thing. These other groups that are talking right now, I don't know. I'm not into Zumba and all that other stuff, so I can't speak for them. But I do know that there is an interest, a very good, large interest right now in the community to start this thing, to get something going within the community, to get people out of their houses a little bit. They want to socially get together. Somebody said, why don't we just do a Zoom bingo? Well, I'm not into that myself, but if somebody wants to do that, fine. But if we're not going to do it until next year, I think the board owes it to the community to come out with a note saying that based on all this, we're not going to go with anything in the ballroom until further notice. That's it. Thanks.
Jim, I guarantee you that we will do that one way or the other once we've come to some final decisions. I know that there are people who need to go, want to get up, etc. There are a couple of people who have got their hands up. Let's ask Renata and whoever is iPhone, I think that's Pedro, say what they want to say, and then I'm going to give some a suggested summary and see where we go from there. Renata, go ahead.
Okay, well, it's been so long since this was mentioned that I'm hoping I have it right. But Jason mentioned a while back that most people are taking responsibility, for their own safety when they are meeting in the ballroom and so forth. And at one point, I thought I heard him say that something about not wearing a mask if they choose to. Did I not understand that right? Because I think that anyone that goes into that clubhouse should be required to wear a mask, not only for their own safety, but the safety of the staff and the community. Because if they're going in there without a mask and coming back out and going to see their neighbors or whatever, they're going to spread it. So
nobody's allowed in the clubhouse.
They should not be allowed in the clubhouse.
Nobody's allowed in the clubhouse without a mask.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood. And then
No, I heard that as well, Renata.
I thought so, yeah.
Me too.
What I think was said was that nobody's allowed into the clubhouse without a mask. If they're in a room together with their friends and they decide that they're all comfortable not wearing, removing their masks, that's what they've done. If there's a consensus that we should not allow that, then we can, we can make sure they don't do that.
We should
Ron,
not
can I say
allow them to
something?
remove a mask once they're in that building.
Totally agree.
Ron, can I say something on that? I'm personally in the two poker groups that are playing on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Everyone wears a mask. Everyone. Sammy insists on it. I insist on it. The little table we play. Everybody has no problem with that. When we take a coffee break or a potty break or something like that, they go outside and take their big gasp for the air, and then they come back and put the mask on. But no, I have never been in the clubhouse under either circumstance where people were not wearing masks.
And Jim, you would be a
Jim,
better.
Jim, I have a question for Jim,
Can I?
if I may. Jason, if I may.
Maggie, let Jason finish.
That Jim, you would be a better person to acknowledge that, because as I was saying, once we've got them set up, they have followed the guidelines. I said if they're removing their masks, they're doing it when they're sitting at the table and have agreed up amongst themselves that they felt comfortable with it. We're not overseeing that. We're not going to oversee it. We're not being part of that event.
Then they shouldn't be allowed in there.
It's not
Not be allowed in there.
but that's not for, once they close those doors, we've removed the staff from those events because Sam is overseeing that. And if Sam is following the guidelines, they're keeping their masks on. My point was not that we're allowing them to do anything. Once that event occurs, Sam is in control of that event, or whoever's holding that event, and he's making sure that they're following the guidelines so that if somebody walks in, if a board member walks in or somebody walks in, they're following the guidelines they were given so that they can continue to do it. So and that's what we've talked about from the beginning of this. The staff is not going to, once those events occur, we're not going to expose them to us, and they're not exposing themselves to us as well. And Jim, like I said, Jim is part of those events, and he knows how diligent Sam has been and how diligent he has been to make sure that they follow the guidelines. As far as the guidelines that were set is that they would wear a mask, and that's what we put forward to them. But it was asked in the past if they are at a table, such as during I'm trying to think of the event that it occurred, but they were distancing, and once they were seated and far enough apart, if they all felt comfortable, they would be allowed to remove the mask if they're sitting at their table, if they got up to move anywhere. Just like it's the same requirement that's at a restaurant currently by the CDC guidelines. Once they're seated at a table and they're amongst their group, if they felt comfortable, they can remove masks. That's something that the board can decide if it's okay. If they don't feel it's okay, then that's a different.
They're only removing their mask in a restaurant because they're having to put a fork in their mouth.
And it's not, and none of this is none of this is for me to decide. This is for the board to review and make a decision and give us guidance. And once we have our guidance, that's all we're enforcing and giving to the individuals holding an event what the guidelines are.
And the guidelines should include the fact that that everybody has to wear a mask while they're there.
And the current ones do, Jim, correct?
Correct.
Okay, what I was gonna
Thank you.
ask Jim, because the first meeting was to try to address Jim's request. The continuation of this meeting is to not only respond to Jim's request, but also to respond to additional requests that were made by other people about the exercise. Regarding Jim, I would like to ask you a question. You said that you are, you're not willing to do it via Zoom. Are you willing to do it outside? Or if it's not inside, you don't want to pursue it? What is your
I don't
stance?
feel that being outside is the proper way to run a bingo. If you start at 6 o'clock, you have people that have, if the breeze comes up, the cards start moving around. I don't have any equipment on the outside. We're using the 2 TV screens that are in the ballroom. We're using our machine. It automatically calls the thing. So all the sound systems, everything is included in that ballroom. So that's why I'm not in favor. And I don't think the weather's going to hold up to be perfect until February of next year when it gets warm again. That's my feeling.
So if you're, just to make sure, I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you cannot do it inside, then you wait until you can. Is that
That's
the
correct.
answer?
I don't see it. And I don't know how to do this Zoom thing while we're on Zoom right now, but I can't see running over to your house and give you a jackpot because you won. I'm not going to play that game.
You wouldn't have to worry about that one. I'm not a lucky person.
Jim has made that clear in his communications with Corey that he doesn't want to do it outside.
Right.
Let's bring in Pedro. You wanted to ask a question.
Yes, I do. It's not much a question, but I just would like to say, Jason is right. It's what adult community is about. Once you establish the rules, people must follow the rules. If you don't go by the rules, you are out. So the board can decide. And I would also like to add, whatever you decide, there will be people to complain because not even Jesus could make everybody happy. So not taking a decision is just a waste of time. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro.
Okay. Rich, did you want to say something else? Can you unmute him, Corey, please?
Yeah, I've asked to unmute. There you go.
I'm muted.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I just also, I had another question, and that relates to the scheduling of the board meetings. I've been a resident for over 4 years, and traditionally, up until the virus, we met in the evening hours for our board meeting. Now, with Zoom, we seem to be locked into this early morning schedule. And
the schedule has been changed so that we're going to alternate mornings and evenings.
But you haven't made that public.
Well,
you haven't made it public, and it's a disservice.
It was sent out.
Wait, let me finish.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Rick. I'm sorry.
Let me finish. It's a disservice to the residents who work full-time or have daytime obligations that they're not allowed to participate in Zoom because we haven't had one meeting that was in the evening since February.
Did we not send it out, Jason?
Yeah, we sent it out. And it's supposed to be. It should be posted on the. It was posted on the bulletin board in there, and it was.
Well, I will ask that it's sent out again, but they've all been set up between now and the end of March, and we're alternating them between a morning meeting and an evening meeting to accommodate as many people as we can.
Thank you. Thank you.
What I'd like to do is kind of summarize here and ask Corey to do certain things. One, the proposal that you that you sent to us for the TV. Mm-hmm. The one thing that concerns me is the size of the casters on the cart.
I thought about that as well. The majority come that way, but we could always retrofit those with more of an off-road tire. So
okay, well, I mean, that I think to me that's an essential part because we're going to move it from inside to outside and across pathways and whatever. You probably need casters that are at least 2 to 3 inch diameter, if not more.
We just want to find that line. Sorry, in between making it tippy, but we've done this sort of thing before, and we can totally do that. The choice that I put out there was also really solid, so that it shouldn't wiggle. So but I get your point.
Okay. what I'm going to suggest, and if anybody disagrees, say so, but what I would like to suggest is follows. One, let's draw up a set of guidelines for the sorts of indoor events that we've been talking about that we would provide to groups who want to participate, and apply that to your list of events that you put out. Two, let's take this list that you put out, break it up into those indoor and outdoor possibilities and see where we can make use of this TV rack. Excuse me 1 second. So that we can come up with a list that we can look at and make some decisions on. We can have some conversations, talk to Jason, and we can join in terms of coming up with this list of conditions for events to take place inside. I do feel that we need somehow or other to provide things for the community, or provide the facilities for people to do things in the community, given all the things that have been said. And the risk of people going outside, if we can stop them going outside, it's worth trying to do something, as long as everybody understands what the conditions are. So if you can do that, then when we gather again, we can look at this and perhaps at the board meeting make some decisions as to which way we want to go, so that we can move this forward. I don't want to keep dragging it on and on and on. We need to make some decisions and move forward with it.
Okay. I can include within that the estimates for tent rentals, as well as what we're looking at between myself and the Lifestyle Committee. We've reached out for some events, comedians, music, that sort of thing outside, so I can just kind of present that as a package if you'd like.
Okay, I think that I think it's been a useful discussion. I've certainly clarified in my mind where I think we want to go, and let's see what we can come up with and make something happen in the next 4 weeks or so.
Yes. Yes.
Anybody, anything else?
Thank you, Corey. You've done a lot of work on this and it's well appreciated. I think it makes it easier for us to see a comprehensive list and the fact that there's potentially different requirements for each. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right. So let's bring it to a close. I know people have got other things to do. I know Jason's getting sore. So thanks everybody for joining. It's nice to see so many people with interest and to follow through what we've been discussing about. It's always appreciated. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.